talked about how can we raise the quality of the people that we bring on board, especially of the young people. So now the focus will be how can we develop the people who can lead these people, so the managers. Okay. I want to know how many of you have taken the leader focus, the report. Do you have the report with you? And so, okay. So how many did not pass the assessment at all? So the rest of you means that you didn't bring, but you have the assessment, or so who doesn't have the assessment? Okay, but you have received the link, right? Yes. So you will have time afterwards, right? Okay, good. Because now will be, we call it like a workshop because it will be interactive, so you will be put to work. That's a good news, right? Okay. So anyhow, those who don't have the report will be quite easy to follow. I want to tell you from the beginning that in the middle of each table you have some materials. Please do not take a look now. I will guide you step by step. Okay, but just to know that they are there. Actually, you will need only one handout at a certain point because we'll kindly invite you to discuss on your tables, on your perspective, okay? Okay, good. So just a few points about who we are. So I said in the beginning that we are for 13 years present on the market, and we strive to help organizations like you to identify and develop talents and leaders. So that's all. Now, the most important point is the agenda for this session. So first of all, what we would like to emphasize is why personality is important in developing leaders. Okay, and that's especially for skeptical audience. So do you believe that personality has anything to do with leadership? Who we are is how we lead, or doesn't matter at all? It does, of course. Yeah. Okay. So we'll see how it works. Then it's understanding different leadership styles that are actually ingrained in our personality and motivation. And the first statement will be that there is no good or bad, and you will see in your report that there are 6 leadership styles. And actually it's about how you manage to balance each style depending on different things. We are going to talk a little bit about self-awareness. We are living in a world where self-delusion is more and more present. So self-awareness is a key element in leadership development. And hopefully you will take something for you because you have the report. So maybe some things that relate to your strengths and some things that you would like to develop. And got some ideas on how can you develop managers in your organization by using these kind of tools, and especially the leader focus report. Okay, so that will be a snapshot in the agenda. How does it sound? Okay, good. So personality and leadership. Some of the point was already made by Jean previously, but I just wanted to be prepared with one slide for more skeptical audiences. Sometimes people say, personality, I don't know what it is, I cannot touch it, so it's something fuzzy, so it does not exist, I don't believe in this. Well, personality and leadership, Joel have showed you before a strong correlation between something, and there is a correlation between personality and leadership, as he said, and it's higher than the bypass operation. The correlation between personality, who we are and how we lead, is higher, it's stronger than ibuprofen and pain reduction. And of course, this is not something that you should do, but it's stronger. The correlation between who we are, our motives, our personality characteristics, and how we lead is stronger than smoking and developing cancer. That's not a good news for the smokers, by the way. Okay, so there is this correlation. It doesn't mean that we are doomed to who we are. This is why I said in the beginning that it's very important, the self-awareness, right? Because if we know what we exceed doing, or what we do too much, or what we do too less, then we can correct. So what is leadership? Because we said, yes, personality matters, but what is leadership? You know, leadership is such a generous subject. Everybody seems to be an expert in leadership these days. I mean, if you Google, you'll find millions of articles, PowerPoint presentation, trainings, theories, ranging from self-proclaimed gurus, consultants, CEOs saying, I found, the holy grail for leadership. I know what leadership means because I am like this, so leadership is being like me. And then we have the academic theory. Sometimes we say that they failed because we don't find many valuable data. So in your opinion, what is leadership? Okay.
I think it's the way to influence people towards
A way
to influence the others towards your opinion or your vision.
Okay. So the ability to influence other people to walk in the direction that you want, to follow on your vision. What else? It was a very good definition. Well, actually, the funny thing is, if you look and talking about the data, everybody can produce data, and this data, of course, can show different things. But I found some funny research, early research on leadership, and they said that actually leadership is the person who leads. So if you are in a leadership role, you are a leader. Or the person who is tall, that's a leader. So please stand up, who is taller, that's a leader. Or there are researches showing if you have a powerful voice, you are more leader than the others. Or a funny thing, if you have a beard. Okay? So in history we have Stefan Cermare. He had some characteristics, but not all. Or Napoleon, some characteristics, but not all. So this is why we said again, so what is leadership about actually? And we found a definition that is very pragmatic, is very much in line with what we have said. And the definition is the ability to build and to maintain high-performing teams. So teams who execute what needs to be executed. That's the definition of Professor Robert Hogan. So if we start from this, that leadership is an ability, the good news is that we can train it, right? We can develop it. So personality predicts the leadership style, and the leadership style, of course, has a great impact on engagement and on performance. Okay, so there is a correlation. Personality impacts leadership style impacts how we engage people, how we retain people, and how we produce together with them performance. Okay, this will be the statements. So we want to share with you a very short movie. And by the way, if you Google, you will see also a website, but also on our website, there is this movie called The Science of Personality. So we invite you to have a look. And in this movie, you will see a definition of what is leadership about. Oh. So that's the technical interaction.
Common. So Alexander the Great would be compared with, say, Julius Caesar, and if there were similarities between the two, we're onto something. Then you would take that profile of the two of them and compare it with, say, Napoleon, and to see what was in common with all three.
And the assumption is that all the good ones had this in common, and therefore that makes you a good leader.
Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Napoleon had some things in common. Number one, all three were short. Today, if you're not 6'2", you're not going to make it. All three were left-handed. The third thing they all had in common, at various stages of each man's life, each one contracted venereal disease. So therefore we can conclude, can't we, that a successful leader is one who is short, left-handed, and risk-taker. How about that?
And that was quite popular. The problem was, when you were a historian, you had your list, and when I was a political scientist, I had my list, and that psychologist had their list, and we disagreed on our lists. And then after the war, in Ohio, they started coming up with style literature. They said it's not to do with your personality and your ability, it's the way in which you lead. The 1960s came along and said, oh, there's no such thing as personality, there's no such thing as leadership. And people would say, well, why do you do that? Well, they said, well, there's leadership for war and leadership for peace, leadership for change and leadership for stability. And there's no such thing as a leader. There are just situations we should throw up leaders. And then the 1980s popped along, and there's every type of leadership. There's servant leadership and non-leadership leadership and tele-leadership and blah, blah, blah. And a whole range of people who just add the word leadership at the end of something or the other. And I think we're coming full circle.
The original one.
Okay. So that was a short video on the history of leadership. So in conclusion, the day-to-day actions that we take will determine the engagement level, and the engagement level will determine the performance. Yeah? You can measure in different ways. You can measure in terms of profit, retention, NPS, and so on. Okay. So why do you think, because we talk about personality and the importance of leadership and what is leadership, and now the question is, why do you think that is important, this self-awareness or knowing yourself? Especially for people who are for the first time in a managerial role, for people who emerge from an individual contributor to a managerial role. So why do you think self-awareness is important? And that's a question maybe I will invite to discuss over your tables, or 2 minutes to think about why it's important. Why it's important to provide people, with this kind of self-awareness. Is there any difference if you are an individual contributor and if you're a manager? I mean, can this be the case that what were your strengths as an individual contributor might become your weaknesses? Imagine, for instance, an accountant being diligent, attention to details, organized. Can you imagine? Have you ever seen such characters? Right? Or a salesperson, energetic, ambitious, self-confident. Nothing stays in his or her way. Imagine these people promoted, right? Can these same strengths become weaknesses? I mean, the detail orientation. If you are a manager, you can suffocate your people with over-controlling, or you might not delegate enough. You might become a micromanager without even knowing, because you keep doing what brought you success, right? Or if you're a salesperson, aggressive, ambition, and if you are a manager, what will you do? Probably you'll have the tendency to compare, but I could, or set the bar very, very high, and people might not be like you. Okay, so this is why we believe that it's very important in the early stage to provide people who move into a managerial position with this kind of insightful tools. So to help them understand what they should continue in terms of their behaviors and what they should stop. Because sometimes, we fell in love with what brought us success, right? And we have certain loyalties towards different behaviors. This is what brought me success, being very perfectionistic, attentive to schedules, or being very aggressive, or being very good team player, right? So we believe that self-awareness is very important, also because of this. I don't know if the picture is seen in the last, so it's, I think it's capturing quite nicely the idea of sometimes this trap of self-delusion. So there are two kinds of stories that we might tell. It's our identity, so it's a story that we tell about ourselves. Yeah, I'm a great leader, I think I'm inspirational, I think that everybody loves me. But if we do a reality check, so the reputation, if we ask other people to describe us, sometimes they might be different opinions, right? So the story that other people tell about us is more important. And in our opinion, at Hogan and at Heart, this is the most important thing, how we understand ourselves through the lens of other people. And actually the report, I had several conversations with you this morning, and people said, wow, it's very useful because it put this information from a perspective that I never thought about. Okay, so this is actually what we strive to do, to create this kind of awareness to the manager, because reputation matters most, right? I never heard about somebody who is followed by his team or by her team based on self-perception. Usually people follow us because they perceive something in us, not because we believe that we are in a certain way. So reputation is important. There is an interesting case. Have you heard about Stanford? It's a prestigious school, business school. And when some professor of Stanford will ask the following, you see a lot of leaders, managers from all around the world. And they were asked, what would you recommend if it's to pick one thing, one competence missing to managers? What would you say? And interestingly enough, they didn't say finance or marketing or statistics, even though these are very important. But these professors said it's very important to cultivate in managers the self-awareness. Okay, so, you know, to be more like in picture number 2. Okay. So this is what I strive to do with this kind of tools, right? So that's another interesting thing. When you are a manager, you're a topic for dinner. Who is a manager in the room? Have you thought that you are a topic for dinner for your employees? So let's be a nice topic, you know. So it's important to be aware of our reputation. Okay, so first consideration for middle managers. What's the deal breaker? What's important for the middle managers? Of course, there is a difference. Have you heard about the notion leadership ladder? The leadership ladder. Okay, so of course there is a distinction probably between what we look in terms of a CEO competencies and maybe first-line managers. What we found in the research is that for middle managers, there are several important things, and that's starting from the fact that middle managers are in charge with executing the strategy with their teams, right? So what's important is probably in terms of competencies, people skills, organizing skills, and of course focusing on results, because you have to produce results with your people while you have this discipline. Okay, but there is an interesting fact. Probably you've heard, I mean, depending on where you look in the literature, they say that people who are promoted, they fail. In some cases, 50%, in some other 60, 66%, so it's a huge percent of people failing. And have you ever heard about this statistic? It's real. Now, the question would be, and I will invite you to think a little bit, is, can you think about some causes? I mean, why this is happening? Why this is happening? Why this managerial failure?
Maybe it's because, as you mentioned, before promoting someone, which... So, the first thing that comes up into my mind is what you have already mentioned. The fact that you need to prepare your people to be able to take on such a, I don't know, new responsibilities, new role, everything is going to change, and you have to act differently. So bringing, providing people with the resources or the tools, trainings, wherever, before they become and they take this role fully. I think it's a very important aspect that is sometimes minimized by organizations because they don't know about the tools, or maybe they just, I don't know, they are not prepared to do so.
So actually what you're saying is one of the reasons, or could be one of the reasons, it's poor onboarding and then poor development. Other ideas, what would be the cause for this managerial fail? Why people fail? I mean, if you're the best salesperson, how come you will fail when you are promoted as a sales? So we have here, here, and there. So we'll start from here.
I think one of the causes might be that whatever it takes as a personality and skills that makes you successful in one role does not necessarily make you successful in the managerial role.
Okay, so actually we can rephrase it's poor definition of criteria of what makes a good leader. So poor definition. Sometimes it's a big confusion. We did a research in Romania several years ago, and the conclusion was that there is a confusion between high performance and high potential. So people are confused. I mean, if you are a high performer, if you're loyal, then automatically you'll be promoted, which is not necessarily the best thing. Okay, and we have two more comments.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Many companies promote internally based on past performance, so they base their succession planning on the performance of the individual contributor, and maybe they or we pass the potential part.
Other comments?
Maybe because he's not able to share correctly the tasks with others. Usually a leader takes consideration to solve all the issues or all the problems.
That's a very interesting. This is the myth of the omnipotent manager, the micromanager, so I have to do with my own hand. I think we have a saying in Romanian, dacă faci cu mâna ta e lucru bine făcut. Okay, so there could be many causes, and we just put a few there. So it might has to do with poor succession strategy. Okay, so confusing this past performance with potential is the halo effect. Sometimes, you know, the stars, the vocal people get, you know, promoted. And Hogan did a lot of research on this emergence factor versus effectiveness factor. It might have to do with poor definition of selection criteria. Sometimes you don't spend time to say, okay, so what does it take to become a manager? What do you need to do? You need to what? To know what, to be how, okay? And the lack of using, you know, predictive tools, assessments. Sometimes, from practical point of view, I hear some of the clients saying that, yes, actually there is not so much, you know, process while we promote. So we just promote. We don't take a serious interview of the people who are in the pipeline. We don't assess them. We don't calibrate sometimes. Yeah. So poor of onboarding, as you said, onboarding, development. Sometimes it's fast forward, or we presume that somebody who had performance will, you know, get success immediately, automatically in the new role. So what we strive to do with Leader Focus Report is to provide an important tool, maybe for selection, but especially for onboarding and development. Okay. By the way, the lack of onboarding, and that was the first comment. Gallup said that many organizations are not having, you know, an efficient onboarding program, and you know, if we had this onboarding, that will have a real impact on retention, you know, on different positions. So we might invest there also. So, in what form do you have your Leader Focus Report? Printed or on the tablet, or who has the printed version? Please, just to, oh, okay, so plenty of you have the printed. This is, you know, a moment of sharing. So if you want to share your report with your colleagues, you can do this. There is no judgment, right? So there is no good or bad, and it's not only the cliche of a psychologist. It's really like this, okay? So what I will try to do very shortly is to guide you, not through all the 6 styles, but only through 3 leadership styles, yeah, to understand. So bear with me a little bit to dig and to tell you what's behind the stage, okay? So, the Leader Focus Report, imagine, I mean, I would make this metaphor. So what you have in front of you, the Leader Focus Report actually is like, you know, the top of the iceberg, right? Here are the results, the data presented in a more understandable corporate language. But what is in the backstage is these 2 assessments that you have taken. You have completed 2 questionnaires, right? Those who had the time to do it. One is Hogan Personality Inventory, HPI, which actually measures what we call the bright side of personality. So how do we behave each and every day? Okay? And then you've taken the second assessment, which is called MVPI. And this assessment is talking about your motives, your drivers, your preferences. Okay, so why do you get out of bed? What do you consider as being good, right, bad, wrong? Okay. Any hint on what each of these tools will predict in terms of leadership? So based on our day-to-day personality, what can we predict in terms of leadership? So let's imagine that you are very sensitive, interpersonal, sensitive audience. You're agreeable, you're nice, you're tactful. So what would that mean in terms of leadership style? How would you behave? Let's imagine the feedback, the performance management. How would you provide it?
In a positive manner.
In a positive manner, nice, yeah, okay. Would it be comfortable for you to give negative feedback? If you're very agreeable, very much oriented towards others, maybe it will be a little bit difficult. So this is first self-awareness, second the training part, okay? Good, so actually you have the leader focus report. At the basis of this report, 2 questionnaires. How you behave day to day, the bright side of personality, HPI, Hogan Personality Inventory, and motives, values, preferences. Why you're doing what you're doing, okay? Do you follow this? Yeah? Okay, now we just put here only 6 out of the 7 scales, the 6 scales that you will have in the report. So what does it measure? I mean, what are the traits that we measure here in the HPI? It's the ambition, so how aggressive you are, how much you're oriented towards results. Do you want to lead or you don't mind being part of a group? Sociability. Can you easily talk in front of an audience? Can you socialize? Can you network with people from other departments, from other companies? Okay? There are people who can do this all the time and they like. Some people who might prefer to see, to observe, right? The interpersonal sensitivity is about our interpersonal style. Some people are warm, agreeable, they want harmony, they avoid conflict. Some other people are more focused on tasks and they don't have any problem with saying no, pushing the limits or challenging other people, offering negative feedback. Okay? And sometimes you can see it's a matter of balance. Prudence, it's how flexible or structured you are. Discipline, structure, compliance to the rules or more flexible. Inquisitive, are you very creative, out of the box or more hands-on, pragmatic and learning approach? How do you acquire information? Do you like to read? Do you read instructions? Do you read all the procedures? Your body language, it's a poker face. Or maybe if you're a low score, it means that you prefer to learn, hands-on, practical experience. It's not good or bad, yeah? Okay, and then, of course, that was the bright side. Then you have the NVPI, the value of values, right? Probably you've heard about Schneider, the ASA model, saying that values, beliefs, determine what a leader reward and sanction, right? I mean, if you believe that discipline is important, who believes this? Rules are important in organization. Nobody, only me. Okay, good. Who believes that innovation, creativity, out of the box is important? Okay, good. So, yeah, probably based on this belief, you will encourage some things and punish other things, right? And, yeah, this is what will be called the real culture that you will create as a leader around you. Okay? And there are certain dimensions, 10. We removed one that is not in the report. So it's recognition, it's public, recognition, power, altruistic, affiliation, tradition, security, commerce, aesthetic, science. You will have all in your report, yeah? For instance, if you are high on the power side, I will kindly ask you if you are high on power. So you want to make, I tricked you, so I see now who are the people with high power. What's important for a high power person? Power means that we want to be a high achiever. We want, to attain big and hard objectives. So what kind of people would you like around you if you're high on power? Ambitious, right? People with drive, with energy, okay? So actually in your report, when you will see a certain leadership style with a higher score, see, you will see also where this is coming from. So if, for instance, you are high on result style, this is coming from a combination Ambition is from the personality inventory. Power is from the motives, preferences inventory, right? So it's what you value and how you behave, and that will give this leadership style. And your score is an average of the two, okay? Probably all of you have different scores. That means where is your focus? Is more on people? Look into your reports. Is more on people or is more on the results? Is more on the process side? Yeah? You'll see on your table you have this handout where you can see all 6 leadership styles. So it's results, it's people, it's process, it's thought leader, so creativity, social leader, data leader. Okay? And then you will have the combination behind. Okay. So I will ask you for one thing. For a middle manager, what would you say? What are the most important for a first line manager, in your opinion, in your organization? What would be the most important combination of styles and why?
The first 3.
The first 3, so it's important also to have this orientation towards results, to set some ambitious targets, maybe not too high, but not too low. People leader, why? Why would it be important to focus on people and not only on the objectives? That's a rhetorical question, right? Because we said the definition of leadership is the ability to build and maintain high-performing teams. Okay, so working with people, being agreeable, but also knowing when to push, when to challenge is an important thing. And the process, because discipline, execution of tasks, follow-up, follow-through, it's also something, reinforcement of rules, yeah? Okay? You can imagine that if it's too much on a certain style, what does it mean? Sometimes we say higher is better, right? We are socialized in this direction. If you have a high score, it's the best, right? But let's say if you are having 100% in results, leader, that's your highest score. Could we think about some negative implications or things that we might need to temper down? Can you think? Who can ask? Who can answer this? So if you are very high on result, what would be maybe some negative implications? Yes, of course, you are energetic, you orient the team toward high results, but anything that might be too much?
You are pushing your team too much, maybe you are not as focused on people.
Mm-hmm. You're pushing, sometimes you might be trapped into this philosophy that you have to push people, you might set too high objectives, you might be too aggressive, so maybe you need to balance, right? Some things. But if you are too high on the process side, discipline, structure, scheduling, any negative implications?
Forget about the results.
You might forget, yeah, probably about the results, could be. But
Or about the big picture, or you won't be innovative enough.
okay, you might put too much stress on discipline, maintaining status quo. You might be inflexible sometimes, okay, not oriented towards a big picture, okay. You might be perceived as inflexible because you want everything to be done in a certain way, okay. Good, so so these are the 6 leadership styles. Each of them has positive and negative implications depending on different things. The most important thing is that this report actually provides the manager with some insights about strengths and development opportunities, very precise. Actually, what you have in your report, you've seen that there are like some coaching tips, yeah, some suggestions. So this is very useful for people who are in a managerial position, not only for the first time, could be also for people who are for a certain period of time, okay? Because it's about themselves, it's a tool to know yourself and understand your impact on your team, on your team results. So here are some examples. So if you are results leader, yeah, ambition and power, what do you do? So you set high goals, expectations for yourself and the team, that's a good thing. You're willing to take charge, but you are too demanding maybe. Okay? So we'll ask you now 10 minutes on your table to take off the handout number 5, okay, and discuss a little bit using these questions here. Only for the first 3 styles, okay? For the first 3 styles. So when you want to share, please raise your hand so that David can spot you and pass the microphone. You're still running out of time. I suggest to stop the discussion in the small tables, and maybe if you have already some highlights, some insights, please share with the whole group, because the coffee break is ready. So this is the first audience that is not sensitive to the idea of a coffee break. You're more prone, to debate intellectually different ideas. So can we stop for a moment? Can we stop? So what are the most important findings, the most important variables that would maybe influence or nuance the way we interpret the results? Who would like to? I've heard many interesting discussions. So it depends on which kind of team do you lead. Maybe there is needed a certain leadership style. If you lead a small team of experts versus a big team of junior people that needs onboarding, that needs coaching. I've heard also that maybe some industry, some functions require a certain leadership style. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know, if it's required to be disciplined, is one thing. I've also heard an interesting questions. We don't have time here, but we have the certification program, so if you want to learn more, you can do it. And the question was, what do we do with paradoxes? So I don't know if in your, but it's at least one person who asked me. So the first dimension that you will find when you talk about different leadership style, the first is out of HPI, so the personality inventory. It responds to the question, what do you do? So if you are, for instance, a high interpersonal sensitivity person, probably what do? You communicate with warmth, you tend to offer positive feedback, you are a team player, so this is what you display, right? The second dimension, yeah, it's out of MBPI, so the motives, values, preferences, inventory. So it explains why do you do what you do, okay? And somebody asked me, but and out of this you have, your focus, right? The people focus style, for instance. And somebody asked me, but I am high on altruistic, I have a high score on altruistic, and I have a low score in interpersonal sensitivity, or a lower, and it's an average people focus. Right? So this is a little bit of a paradox. How come if you are an altruistic person, so you do care about the people, right? But you are low in interpersonal, so your style is more direct, straightforward. What does it mean for you? We call it the tough love syndrome. So because I care about my people, I give very straightforward feedback because I want to help them, right? But in terms of reputation, probably people will perceive me as a direct person, sometimes without nuances. So maybe the opportunity is to understand that I should develop more the ability to deliver negative feedback in a good way, yeah, not to confront all the time, not to be so conflictual. Okay. So if you is anybody else who has this kind of paradox in the report in different other areas? Okay. Yeah. So what we want to tell you is that our team can help you, who wants, can have a discussion, a meeting, a call to debrief your own report. So we're happy to do this because, of course, it requires understanding more about your context, what kind of team do you lead, in which industry you are, yeah? What are your aspirations, and so on. So what would be your conclusions based on the discussions and based on what we have presented with this leadership focus?